All right, cool. So it looks like we are live. I'm gonna wait a second and let people come in and join us, so we'll be able to answer questions and see the comments. So we're live on the BeatStars Twitch channel, on YouTube, on their Facebook, and I believe on their Periscope. So it looks like we got some comments coming in. I'm gonna wait another second or two. But how are you doing, Junae? I appreciate you joining me.
I'm good. Thank you again for having me. I feel really good. Despite everything that's happening in the world, I'm in like a good space, just getting things done, trying to level up some more, but I feel really good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I feel the same way. Like this year has been like from a business perspective, a work perspective, like I'm back in my groove. I'm feeling good. It's just the world around us is not cooperating.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, we have to try to operate within this world. We have to try to educate artists to operate within this world. So today we're going to be talking primarily about what typically is the most popular topic when people reach out to us, just marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So how do I get out there? How do I, get people's attention in this world where everybody's trying to get attention? Yes. So I think it's going to be a great discussion. This is the first time actually Junae and I have spoken, so it's going to be educational for me. But before we jump into all the tactics and the suggestions you have for people, can you just talk a little bit about your background, who you are, how you got to this point, and what you're currently working on?
So I started out, I guess, professionally. Well, let's go beginning, right? Because there might be some younger people on here too. So I went to Five Towns College for business management with a concentration in music business. So basically I was taking courses in music business throughout my whole college career, whether it be like publishing and copyright or an actual music marketing class or actual concert production and promotion class, right? So we have all these different things that I had to learn for the degree program, business law, a bunch of stuff. So I kind of already came out of school with a pretty nice wealth of knowledge. And I interned in college at RCA Records. There wasn't really any openings there at the time. So I ended up landing at Columbia Records in finance and operations. And basically they controlled the strategy part of marketing. So all the finances, the budget, and also, overseeing all the record deals. So nobody could get signed or extend their deal or anything without it coming through my hands first. Also handled a lot of the, all of the streaming numbers and market share numbers for all the labels. And, prepared those reports for all the different presidents and CEOs and heads of the different labels to have their, monthly gatherings. And so it was a lot of cool stuff. And I learned not only, the things in my different departments, but I also just learned how a label runs because it was heavy with operations. And, working really closely with people like Rob Stringer, who's now the head of the whole Sony. And so I learned so much. It was the perfect, crash course, I would say, fresh out of school. Very grateful to be able to be thrown in there in that way. And then I actually went back to RCA and I worked in urban marketing on a bunch of different artists. So, RCA has everyone from Chris Brown, H.E.R, Bryson Tiller, all the ASAPs, Usher, everybody is on RCA. And so that was a really great experience. And then some corporate changes kind of happen and I'm super creative. So I'm the idea girl, and that's what I was hired for. And, you learn quickly that even though you're in creative spaces, that there's still a kind of corporate bottom line. And so that can kind of impact how creative you can be at work. And so we kind of came to the conclusion that it was just listen, this is not what I was hired to do. It became very administrative. And so I actually was on my way to be hired at another music company. And I was juggling between do I want to do that and just go back into everything? Or do I want to try doing what I do well on my own? I remember processing invoices for independent marketers or independent publicists and being if you do the math, they might be making more money than I am and having more fun and they don't have to be in the office every day. And I'm my hands on. So, essentially I ended up, just started my own company, and I've been running B2P ever since. So that's pretty much how I got here.
Okay. So I always ask this to my guests that have gone to school and had a more structured path. Like, was school a big part in kind of your stepping stone? Do you use what you learned in school? Like, how do you look at school and how it's played a role in what you're doing today?
So, my degree program was very specific, right? And, I had the opportunity to go to other schools, but none of them had a music business, or, I was singing at the time too. When I first got to school, I was still singing. And so they were actually the only program that had music and vocal and music business. First semester in, I fell in love with the business side, and I was like, listen, I'm not paying these people to teach me how to sing. I've been doing that all my whole life. If I really want to pursue music, I'll figure it out, right? I would say that yes, I always tell people, school is about two things. Yes, about your degree program, if you can get super specific, but I think it also teaches you more so how to deal with people. And it's like a mini adulting boot camp before you get out into the real world, where you can make mistakes, you can try things. I was head of student government and activities, and I ended up putting on 66 events per semester. See, that was something that really helped me in my career, because we do event production too. And when I was working at labels, I was organizing all the album release events, even now doing festival events, dealing with people, having budgets, and how do we market the events. So I would say yes. And it's not, some of the things that I learned in classes actually stuck and I do use today. But more so, I think it was the experiences and being able to kind of kickstart getting, my feet wet. But another thing that I think is more important than school. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is school is important. You should educate yourself, whether it's in school or getting a mentor or reading books. The internet is vast. You can almost learn anything on it. Save things like med school. I think you should go to school for that. But yeah, let's not play with that. But I think experience is important. So for me, I think interning was super important. Being able to be in the building, see how things really work. RCA really let me, once they figured out that I had good ideas, they let me work on artist one sheets. They, gave us projects where I was creating whole rebrand strategies. They used some of the ideas. It was great to really see how things work and get the experience. And then you can take that anywhere, right? So I always tell people, even if, because it's hard to get an internship these days without some sort of college, whatever, but it's not impossible. I know plenty of people, if you're willing to hustle or even tell somebody hey, can I just shadow you? There's also so many different ways to be in the music business outside of working at a label now too. Right. So another thing that you can do is find somebody who's not necessarily super traditional, where they're in the office every day, and ask them to work with them. And it may not even be that you end up doing what they do, but you end up in spaces, you end up being connected. So when there is an opening, or you can tell people oh, this is what I'm interested in. And people are willing to help if you're cool and hardworking. That part is not rocket science. I think it's about getting in the spaces though, and getting in the door. And now, even the internet, right now we're on here now because of the internet, right? Because of networking online. And I feel it's social media is fun and use it for your leisure, but also use it for what it's for, which is connecting.
Right, for sure. So how many years were you at the labels before you started your company?
So I was at the labels for about 3 years.
Okay. Years. And people jump out at different times. Some people stay in a more structured corporate environment their whole career. Some people wait a little longer to start their own thing. What made you feel like it was your time? Was it just seeing those checks coming in? Hey, I know I'm already being undervalued, so let me jump out here and do my own thing.
What's crazy is I always tell people, I always wanted to have my own marketing agency, brand management company. But I thought that it was going to be when I was 45, 50, gave the labels all I got, like, cool, now I have this passion project, guys. I have like this agency. I swore, like I have like old vision boards, old notebooks where like that was the plan. I was so ready to like dedicate the next 15 years of my life to the label system. I really, really was. But when I parted ways with RCA, I had a conversation with my mom, and she was kind of like, you know, because I was already in my like the final interview for another company. Then I have like all my friends that work in music, like, hey, you want to come over here? There's something here, there's something here. And it was kind of getting overwhelming. And my mom was like, well, you know, you went, because for real, I've been interning since I was like 16. Like for, you know, A&Rs, artist managers, people who one of my best internships is probably for a startup brand management and marketing company. And they did like a lot of artist development, and we got that artist like One Afro Punk, Good Morning America. Like we were able to do so much stuff, and I got to see it in real time, like really grassroots. But I say all this to say, my mom was like, listen, you've been going forever. You didn't get a break. Like I didn't, after school, college is over. Most people are like, okay, well, maybe I'll take a year off, or I'm looking for a job. Like, no, I went from graduation. I had broken my ankle, Lord, before graduation. And so as they were like, well, if you want to come just intern some more in the summer until you find a job, like you can do that. And I was like, okay. They were like, as soon as you get in a cam boot, come through. And so that's what I did. I was like hobbling around the office, like busting my ass. And I went from there, like by September, late August, early September, I was onboarded into Columbia. So like there wasn't a break. And so then it's like years of being at the label and I still don't have a break. And she was like, you know, if you want to take a second to breathe and figure it out, you can do that. And I think that was probably the best thing. I don't know if I would have my company if I didn't do that. Because originally too, Brown to Perfection was supposed to be like a website that like gave people resources, and that was it. I swore I was gonna have this dope blog, and that was gonna be like, you know, my brand outside of like working in music. No, whole entire company. And I didn't necessarily think, I don't think I was more so like, am I ready or am I not? But I'm like really spiritual, and I was just praying about it. And I was like, listen, if I get this gig that I'm going for the final interview at this music company, then that's what I'm supposed to do. If not, I'm going to try to do my own thing and see what happens. And when it was like a very weird glitch that happened with that whole thing, and they were like trying to fix it. And I was like, no, like this is my rainbow in the sky. I'm going to go for it. And I just never looked back, honestly. And I think once I started, because I think when you are an entrepreneur too, there's the first phase of like, it's exciting, you're doing this thing. And then there's the phase of where you're kind of like, okay, am I really going to do this or am I not? And I think once I got past that and I was like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously, I just couldn't even imagine doing anything else. Like, I couldn't imagine. And I think that's how I knew I was ready. I mean, I was a business major, so there's things like, is the business really sustainable? And you know, once I hit a certain number and I just realized the full potential of it outside of just clients, like even the community aspect and how I could kind of help emerging creatives and artists and entrepreneurs, I just felt like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And so I was like, yeah, I've never really had a moment where I felt like, damn, like this is not it. I should just go get a job. And I always myself like, if I felt like that, then I would probably just be like, all right, let me just go apply for something. But yeah, and I think that's what it is too, because I think sometimes in entrepreneurship, you know, you're trying this totally new thing that has nothing to do with what you're doing. Like I could definitely go work at a music company and just be cool, you know, working, doing good work, but like, you know, make my money and just climb the ladder regularly. And I think the fact that I'm really deciding to not means that, you know, this is something that I really, you know, really want to do and am meant to do.
Right. Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be like flexible and fluid. Like you never know kind of what your like what different transitions your business is going to go through and what it's going to look like, 5-10 years from now. Because a lot of people, this year is a great example of that, have had to, well, a lot of people have seen their businesses shut down, but a lot of people have been able to pivot and mold into something different or offer a different service or a different product. And I think you just have to have that nimbleness and that creativity as an entrepreneur to have long-term success. So whereas you said your brand, you thought of it maybe as just kind of like a community or a website. And I think a good example of this is Justin Hunt, who's my guy who, came from the corporate world himself and just established his brand as the company man. But he was the chief editor at Hip Hop DX. He branded himself on social media as the company man. And then he, was working with Empire, and now he's doing his own stuff again. So he has his own brand, and he's smart, he's creative. So he'll be able to kind of be like water, like Bruce Lee says. So cool. So what would you say, like, who is your primary client, or who is your ideal target audience for your company, and what do you do for them?
So I would say it's kind of twofold. So the clientele is either, artists or brands that, obviously need marketing strategy or brand strategy. But then there's also elements of the company that is partnerships. And so what we do is we help connect larger brands, especially with the audience that they're trying to tap into. Like, we're really good, in urban spaces, Black and brown spaces, just creative people in general, creative entrepreneurs, women of color. Like, we definitely dominate hip hop. Like, we dominate that whole cultural space. And I would say that we're really good at connecting the culture to the corporate bottom line, because one thing that I have learned from working at companies is that there's always both of those. And a lot of times, like, if you don't have the pulse on both, one is going to be unhappy or just not work out right. That's how we see a bunch of campaigns that it's like they're missing something. Like, it sounds like it's supposed to be there, but it's not completely authentic. Or you have the opposite, where this huge cultural moment, but it doesn't, provide a return of investment for the company. And so we basically are like the intersection of that. Like, I could take, a company like, for example, Sour Power Straws, and be like, hey, our demographic loves you guys. Here's some stuff you want to do. You want to increase sales in this area. I also, sometimes I'm pitching companies and they have no idea how much the audience even rocks with their product, because they just weren't thinking about that area. Yeah. And so we'll formulate campaigns for stuff like that. But when it comes to like artists and, small companies and brands, it's really just about, making them the best version of them. I think everyone has something special about them, something that makes them them. But I think, especially when you talk about like artists, like outside of the art, that's a lot of work to try and figure out now, paint this picture and package it properly for the fans to kind of understand. Even the artists where it seems like it makes sense and it's just like it still takes different tactics and different, like you said, like there's so much going on in the world, so much going on the internet alone. Like every millisecond, we're getting something else and someone else. So how do you figure out like who you are talking to, like who your audience really is? Because everybody is like, oh, I want everybody to listen to my music. It's like, maybe everybody will one day, but you have to start with a concentrated audience first. Like you have to figure out like who your people are, because those people are going to tell more of your people and find more of your people. And then they start to do the work for you. And then the outer people, right, who's the everyone, they'll catch on like eventually, like once you're already like this snowball of like dopeness, like then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of fire. But by that time you're like mega, right? Or really, you've solidified the branding. So we help artists and brands do that through a lot of digital content strategy, because digital is everything. A lot of interactive strategies too, when outside was open. Obviously, I like to cap off strategies with something experiential, something where people can really feel, and really, like, that to me seals the deal. Like, watching everything on the internet is one thing, but once you get people in a room or in a space where they can experience the product or experience the music, like, that changes the game for them. Like, now they're loyal. Or anybody who wasn't a believer, like, now you really got them. Anybody who didn't come out, they're having FOMO. Like, I love creating, the conversation. And I think that's really what all of it is about, really. A lot of times is creating a conversation. Like, you got to have people talking about you. And that doesn't mean you have to do something outlandish or, take the, I'm doing something so crazy to go viral route. But it does mean that you have to get people talking. Like, it's not enough to just make the artwork look pretty, put it out, and then we're done. Like, that is not 2020 at all.
For sure. So if you're working with artists, say the artists that you do work with, is there like a common thing or a common mindset that they have wrong that you kind of need to re-educate them on or work with them on? What are some of those things that you just see consistently across the board that artists just don't quite grasp?
I think a lot of artists that's a good question. Let me think about it before I answer. Okay. There's quite a few of them. I think one common thing for sure is, I think it's that, like, artists thinking that they don't have to do more. Like, there's so many artists that are just true artists, and they're just like, I just want to make the music and put it out, maybe, right? Because a lot of artists holding on to music. I'm like, why are we doing that, right? So it's like they just like, I don't understand why I have to do so much. But then in the same breath, you have artists that are like, oh, I need marketing. And then a lot of them don't even understand what that even means, but that's what they're being told. Like, I need better marketing. Like, I don't know, I need people to see my stuff. They're not seeing it. How do I do that? How do I increase my following? The following thing is a big one, depending on the artist, because I typically work with artists that have teams or have some sort of label situation, or almost there, but maybe have an efficient team and they're working to get to the label area. But even that, it's like the followers thing. And one thing you really you have to drill into the head is that if you focus less on followers and more about like giving people a reason to follow you, the followers will come. They just start to show up in droves, and then you can't get rid of them. They just start to show up. But it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get that concept, because and I don't blame anyone, because I think if you're not necessarily in marketing or in the space, you're kind of only looking at surface level. You're looking at like, okay, I need to get my Instagram popping. Like, I need to, that's like, boom. Like that one and done. But there's so much else that like you could be doing. And like Instagram is like the last thing. Like, to me, yeah, you can make your Instagram lit, but then there's another thing, like, are they just liking your pictures, or are they listening to the music? Because we also see people who have a bunch of followers and their streams suck. So then you have artists that are super small and like social media wise, like, and the music is going crazy. And then by the time somebody finds out like whose song is that, then it's like, oh wow, okay, we're just gonna follow anyway. So I think probably those two things for sure, like the following thing and just understanding that like, no, you cannot just put out your music and go. You can't. You can't do it. And I mean, if you get to the point where you have people around that can kind of just do the legwork for you, that's awesome. But until you get there, like, you got to put in work, and you have to. And I think for emerging artists, like really indie artists, I think that can come off as intimidating. And so one thing I also try to do, just from like a resource standpoint, even if it's not clientele, is give people and teach them ways that they can do stuff themselves. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that I even was doing at the label that like people could 100% do themselves. Like, you could, invest and have it could look almost as good, if not as good, as the tactics and things they're doing. I think there's this idea also that everything costs so much everything takes so much. And really, if you consistent with a few things, it really goes a long way. Like my strategies are cost efficient, especially if I'm dealing with an artist that doesn't have a big budget behind them. It's like every dollar counts, right? And even being an entrepreneur, like that's something that I can understand from my side. So we trying to get as, you know, quality, of course, but cost efficient as possible.
Right. So obviously it's not just, you know, having the money to be able to pay you for your services, but like what makes an artist easy to work with so that they maximize their time spent with you, right? Like,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I think what makes an artist easy to work with, I'll be honest, is primarily having a great team or a great manager, right? I typically, from a retaining like clientele standpoint, I don't even really work with artists anymore who don't have that, because if they don't, then I end up having to try to do that and do the marketing. And so that's a lot. But that's usually what makes it, I think at this point, I feel like that's what makes it the best, because artists go through a lot. And like me, just even having different relationships with artists and different creators, like I understand that it is a very different life to live. It's a very, you know, it's just different. And I don't even think that it's good for, after a certain point, for artists to even be so involved in things that don't have to do with the art and then being their best. So usually for me, when an artist has a really good manager, it makes it easy. You know, and of course, people that are kind and easygoing. I like artists too that are not, you know, everybody cares about their craft for sure. But I do like artists that are like, okay, if you're saying that this is going to work, this is going to be good, let's do it. Like just super open-minded, you know, not the people. What happens is we see other people do cool stuff and then we're like, oh, that's dope. Like I want to do something like that. But not understanding that that's something that we didn't see before. And so in order for it to get the response it got, like they had to take a chance on it. And so, you know, versus it's like, if you really want to like start that conversation and make a statement, like you're going to have to be willing to do something sometimes differently than how you've seen it done already, or in a new way, and like not be afraid to do that. So I like artists that are willing to take risks. And just, you know, let me do my thing. Like, just let us, like, you know, lead the way and get you where you want to get going. Like, I'm very like, look, I'll bet the house on it. If I'm wrong, I might give you your money back. But like, if I feel really strongly about the strategy, I'm like, listen, like, please just listen to me. I think all marketers go through this too. Like, you create this entire strategy and it is so phenomenal. And like, you're not working by yourself. You're working with the client, you're working with the company. And it's like, when they like don't quite listen, or they like remove one piece, it's just like, it's just like watching, you know, I don't know, like somebody like knock over all your dominoes or something. It's just like, oh my God. So I really do like artists who have good management, who can be that liaison and who can just get things done. Like I don't have to wait. Like artists do not operate on like a normal, creative people in general just don't operate on a normal playing field. Neither do I. So I get it. And so I'm like, I don't like to have to be chasing around behind people. Like, can you get this done? Is this done? Did you check on this? I don't like doing that, versus having an efficient manager whose literal job is to make sure that my life and the artist's life is easier. I think that, and being like open-minded, willing to take risks and willing to work, because, you know, nothing is like a marathon. Nothing happens overnight. Your favorite artist started exactly where you are, and just being willing to like see it all the way through.
Right. So what would you say is, when would you know if like an artist is ready to work with a company like yours, outside of just the ability to pay? Like, is there a certain level that the artist needs to be at before you think they can take full advantage of what you're doing? And what is that level? What does that look like?
I agree. Like there is definitely a level because I am not a person, like I'm very selective when it comes to clientele. Outside of me having to like money's not really like obviously if I was doing this for money, like I would totally be working at like corporate doing something else, or I would just be doing something else. Like there's 1,000 ways to make money. But when it comes to clientele, like one, I do have to actually like the music and believe in the music. That's for starters. I think as far as the level that an artist needs to be on, I think just going back to that management thing, like, and it maybe not a manager, maybe you just have an efficient team, like an efficient one or two people that work with you as well. You got to have somebody outside of you because I don't even want you to be in a space where you're stressed trying to carry out the strategy, but then also help me implement. Like that doesn't work. So definitely that. I would say an artist that's somewhere in between. My favorite is right in between, like getting signed and where they are. Like a couple of more steps and they'll be in a situation and whatever that is. Cause some artists don't want a label deal, right? Some artists just want an agent, you know, they want a touring deal or something like that. Whatever that goal is for them, I love to get an artist like right in between that space. So where people that are in the know are talking about them, like, you know, maybe there's a couple of A&Rs looking at them, like they have, you know, one or two really solid projects out that, you know, kind of resonated with people. And they're in a space where they just have to make it all make sense. Like, you know, it's not necessarily because I'll have artists where it's like, you know, they are just an artist and the music is good. And it's like, we have to like completely, you know, just figure out what's great about them and kind of maximize that, you know, because I don't like to take somebody and make them something different. First of all, that's too hard for them to keep up with. And the consumer, the listeners, the fans can see right through that. So, you know, really just like in that space, like the music has to be solid and you have to have a story. Because my job is to figure out how to tell that story. And so, you know, what is the story? I think even constantly speaking with friends that are like in A&R or, you know, in talent agencies or whatever, half the time that is all it's missing. They can really like the music. And even though they don't work in marketing, they know that it's going to have to be able to be marketed for it to work. And so you have to come already with a full-fledged package and like super knowing, but there has to be a story. Like, and I don't believe that whole like, oh, there's no story. I just like, no, there's something to you. There's something more, even people that take the mysterious route, right? So like working on an artist like Bryson, like he was super serious about, you know, Dad Hat Low and like having to create, you know, that and basically how to make that mystique work. You know, that in itself is marketing, right? But it's still something, even though it's like, it's still like a story. It's still a part of it. You have to make it work. Even looking at, you know, Gabby Wilson, who's somebody I worked on who, you know, rebrand into H.E.R, right? It's like, there's that story still. You have to, you got to have something where I feel like, okay, we can create that story. You know, when I browse through an artist and, you know, whether I'm looking at their online content or if they have like a, you know, a whole, you know, one sheet or a whole deck or whatever the case is, and I'm listening to the music, like if I'm not starting to, my mind moves fast. So I'm not starting to piece together like, oh, okay, like this is the vibe I'm getting. Oh, this makes sense here. This group of people would really like that. Like if I'm not kind of getting or able to paint a picture, then you're probably not ready.
So tell me, because I don't know. Obviously, Bryson has this mystique, this mysteriousness around him. Was that always the case? Like even in his early days before he got signed, I'm not sure what his story was. Like, was he always mysterious? My thing is like a lot of artists look at Bryson and like they want to try to create the mysterious thing too, but that's very hard for an independent artist to do. right? Like, because a lot of times they just want to be mysterious because they don't want to do social media. They just want, they like the idea of being mysterious because they think it's less work, right? But typically when independent artists try to be mysterious, they basically become unknown because nobody knows about their stuff. Like, it's just unknown.
Right.
How did Bryson, like, because it's easier to be mysterious if you have a label kind of planting seeds various places for you. And it's like, wow, like there's this mystique around this person, but it was created by a bigger machine. Like, it's hard for independent artists to replicate that.
Well, with Bryson, I agree with what you're saying, but with Bryson, it wasn't really like, oh, this artist is so dope, let's create a mystique around him. It was, oh, this artist is so dope, this is how he is. So we have to work with who he is, like, as a person and as an artist. Like, that wasn't made up. Like, it wasn't like, oh, let's just, you know, no, it was like, he is not with it. Like, this is him. Like, he's very, I'll never forget, a couple of years ago when Bryson first came out, Don't was a huge hit. We had a show at Webster Hall, sold out show. I think he actually maybe did 2 shows, sold out show. We're upstairs in the VIP, like, you know, all the label people, all the artists, and nobody, there's people, partners, journalists, everybody like, where's Bryson? Where's Bryson? Bryson was walking around in the VIP, but nobody knew where he was at. And I mean, I wasn't going to tell them where he's at because he don't want to be bothered. So I'm just like, yeah, he's around, right? But he literally was walking around like hat low, like that's just him. So it was like, you can't, I think Arsay did a great job with Bryson because it wasn't forcing an artist to be something that they're not, right? I'm a strong believer in that. It's more about maximizing who the artist is. Like, okay, you're mysterious, and, you know, he had personal reasons too as to why he didn't really want to be on camera and stuff at that time. But it's like, okay, this is who you are. This is what we have to work with. This song is going crazy. Let's figure it out. Let's paint the picture. But I do agree with, and I think,
I'm sorry, but was that the case? Like, so at what point did he get, like, did he get signed? Like, did his music just go crazy and he wasn't really doing much on social media and then he got signed? Or did somebody recognize that he has crazy talent and he got signed super early and then they started kind of building him up? Like, what do you know what the beginning was like?
I believe Tunji signed him. I think, I don't want to like mess up the story, so that was a couple years ago, but I believe, I want to say that the song, I think the song might have went crazy first. Like, I think Tunji was already like looking at him and already had a relationship with him maybe. And I believe the song popped first, or like kind of at the same time. It's like they were already looking. So the song pops, get the signing, and then now it's like, what do we do with him? Kind of thing. Yeah. So it wasn't like sign him, let's create this mystique while we're putting out the record. It wasn't like that. It was the opposite. So really like organic, like, oh, we got to put something together. Because a lot of times, you know, artists will get signed and you get that breath and it's like, ooh, okay, what do we want to do? How do we want to market this? How do we want to put it out? With him, it was more like, this is what we got, and we got to figure it out. We can't change him into something, especially not in the beginning, because it's already hard enough to like get artists to like get with the strategy. Like, you have the time, but when you don't have the time, it's like that wouldn't have worked. Trying to get him to like flip and turn into like whoever while this record is already like going off the rails. So yeah, that's how that was. But speaking to what you said about artists trying to like replicate that, I actually said something recently, like, or maybe some months ago, where I was just like, that doesn't work. That's done. Like, I think that's done. Like, the Mystique era is finished. Because I think if you haven't already done it and been successful in it, don't go that route. I think fans now are actually shifting more to wanting transparency from the artists. We see it. We see it in the Cardi B's. We see it in the Summer Walker. Like, you know, they want to feel like the artist is a person. And I mean, there's artists that can still kind of just put out the music and have the persona aspect, and that's dope. But they want to, like, people like transparency. Like, it's definitely the mystique thing is done. Like, you either have the persona and you're giving them this brand and that's what you're giving them, or it's you still doing that, but it's transparent and it makes them feel, you know, humanizing artists, for better or worse, right? Because, you know, we've seen it kind of go left depending on the day. But yeah, I would say if an artist is trying to do that, I also think that with artists, it's not even mystique that they're looking for anymore. I think it's that uniqueness. And I think instead of going for mystique, because you don't have to be on social media 24/7 to make this work. You just have to be consistent in however much you are going to be on there and telling a consistent story. Because we see, and the music got to match, right? Like, you got to know yourself. And I think that there's plenty of artists that are obviously huge artists now, but that they don't really do social media. But when they do, you know, they do it well. They've figured out a way to establish that base so that, okay, every time you do drop, people are like, oh my God. But if you're an emerging or new artist, like, you got to build the base first. If you don't have a base, that's not going to work either. Like, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of artists just aren't willing to kind of put in the work that it takes to build up a brand. Because I'm not going to act like it's not work, but that part is work.
There's an artist, there's a rapper, an independent rapper that I follow. His name is Khan, Kaan, and his fans, or the people that told me about him, told me that he has an anti-social media following, so that when he posts too much, like, his fans get upset. And I'm following him just to see how this works. Like, I don't even know how that's going to work. Like, if you have an anti-social media following, I don't know how you engage with them, how you grow. So I'm watching it closely because I try to stay open-minded. You know, obviously I don't know everything. So I'm just going to keep following this story and see how it plays out.
So I think that's really cool because, I mean, even from a marketing standpoint, that in itself is marketing. The fact that someone word of mouth told you that his thing is an anti-social media following, like, that in itself is like a social media tactic. I mean, whether he's doing it on purpose or not, but like, it works because now you're following him. You're looking, I'm going to follow him. The people in the chat are going to go follow him. I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, he's dope. Like, he's dope. Like, he's definitely dope. So anyway, I took some screenshots of some of the stuff you've posted, and I just want to just kind of, I guess I'll turn it into a question, but it's stuff you've posted. I just want to expand on it a little bit. Also, for the people that are watching, if you type your questions in the comments, I'm going to grab a couple of them before we close out so that you guys can ask some stuff that I didn't cover. So we probably won't be able to get to all the questions. But feel free to type a comment in the comment box wherever you're watching, whether it's on Facebook or Twitch or Periscope or YouTube, doesn't matter. But anyway, so there was one, you said, please don't leave marketing out of your release or launch budget. People are still doing that? That you had to post that? Like, people are still leaving marketing out of their release or launch budget?
Yeah, people will literally, like, they'll just, I don't know what it is they're paying for. I guess the studio, I mean, there's stuff that costs money, right? Studio time, beats, all that stuff. And then, you know, I mean, the most marketing they might do is like the cover art, maybe a photo shoot if they really about it. And then after that, they're like done. They're like, so what now? And I'm like, you can't. Like, that, to me, that should be the biggest budget, right? Like, outside of like creating, how am I going to get this to people? How am I going to get people to hear it? Like, yeah, it's on DSPs, wonderful. But if nobody knows that it's there, or you're not giving them a reason to go check it out, then what have we done here? Like, it's just not, you got to be able to take it further. And like, I'm not saying you got to know how to take it further, but maybe you pay somebody who does know how to take it further and you figure it out. I mean, there's just so much you can do these days too, like from making things interactive. Like, I always say, like, you know, I like to do this in general, but especially now in the days of COVID, like, you should be really like rallying your fans, who your core people are. send them something for free that goes with their album promo, something that they're going, they're going to post on Instagram that's going to give you extra shares. Like shareable content is like super easy, but super key right now. Create an Instagram story filter. I don't know, like you can literally do anything at this point. At this point, you can do almost anything. Right. Like you should have a budget for those things, even if it's small. Running ads, right? Like I always tell people, I do recommend you have an actual core audience before you start investing in ads, but ads is something, and it doesn't cost a lot, but it's like, you can't get to the end of your project and be like, oh, well, I'm trying to put this out at the end of the month. What do I do? And then be surprised when like the things you want to do, especially in the interest of time, are going to cost money. Like, right. I think you should be preparing people for the release before you even tell them a release is coming, right? Mm-hmm. Like if digital is your main source of doing that, then you need to invest in making it look right. I can't stress it enough. Like, or having a conversation where it's like, they want to do all this marketing and I bring up like a number, or I tell them how much it's probably going to cost for us to like implement something. They're like, damn. And I'm like, and you about to put you want to put the project out like next week and you don't have any, it doesn't work like that. I think you definitely need to sit down, right? Same way you sit down and you like, okay, what's the final title of the project? What's the artwork going to look like? When I want to put it out, okay, how am I going to market it? And how much is that going to cost? And how much can I set aside for that as well?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me take a couple of questions before I go through a couple more of these screenshots. So Tandy asks, artists often want to stay mysterious because they don't want to be copycatted. Do you have a suggestion for how to remain transparent without concern for being copied?
Yes. My advice for that is don't be concerned with being copied. Be concerned with actually putting out music and actually being visible. Because while you're worrying about being copied, there's people out there that maybe not even half as good as you or half as talented as you that are getting the visibility that you deserve because they're willing to put themselves out there. Like if you don't learn anything else from me during this conversation, like I've been saying through every, conversation I've had during quarantine is like, do what you know how to do. Like all this like holding back and overthinking and, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it this way. And, oh, what if somebody copies me? Like all that has to go out the window, because while you're sitting there doing that, again, there's people running it up right now. There's people that are in the best space that they've ever been in just because they decided to consistently go for it. And I mean, if somebody's copying you, then that means you actually got something fly going on. So you should keep doing it. Like you should totally keep doing it. And if you're consistent in what you're doing and somebody really is blatantly copying you, now you have this base and all these people that like will surely call them out. Like, and then boom, there's even more visibility for you because now you got a little bit of spice going on. But yeah, we can't be concerned about that. Like as somebody who creates, I totally get that mindset, but like, first of all, how is anybody supposed to copy you and you don't even put anything out? So this is kind of like in your head a little bit. It's like, you're not even getting a chance for anybody to copy you to see how good your stuff is and make them want to do the same thing. So, I mean, how long can you wait on because of that?
This applies to producers for the longest time too. Like, there were a lot of producers that started killing it, selling beats online, selling beats on BeatStars, killing it, making tens of thousands of dollars a month. And people jumped in late because some of the early folks were like, I'm a little hesitant to put my beats online because I don't want them stolen or I don't want them copied. Yeah. So you lost a first mover advantage and lost out on opportunity because you were on the edge of the pool, scared to jump in, essentially.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends that like are producers and like work in a space, and like I feel like it's just like stay hot. Like, why are you, if you're really as good as you're supposed to be, as you think you are, as you say you are, stay hot. Like if you're constantly creating, whoever is copying you will always be 3, 4, 5 steps behind you. And then, I mean, things like copyright also exist. So if somebody really is, stealing your stuff, like you can absolutely take them to court, get your money, do what you got to do. But I always say, like, to not put stuff out for nobody to really truly know what you do and that you do it is a huge disservice to yourself. Huge disservice to yourself. Like, that's a prime example. Like, yeah, I wouldn't do that.
So there's a quick one we can answer for Ptolemy. She asked, what is a DSP? That's just a digital service provider. So that's like Spotify, Apple Music.
Tidal.
So that's all that is. So let's see. Arnie is Art asks, what do you consider a core audience? How big should it be before you think ads should be run?
I say a core audience is when you have engagement that leads to conversion. So I'm gonna break that down, right? So I actually I have a series called Brownie Bites where I do like bite-sized tips on marketing. And the last one was actually exactly about this. So followers are just people that follow you, right? They've done the bare minimum. They're there, they clicked follow, and they might interact with you. They might not. I mean, we see it all the time where it's like, you have X amount of followers and only, I mean, outside of the algorithm, right? There's only but so many people are like interacting with your stuff. Engagement is when people are liking, they're commenting, they're sharing, right? Like that's them actually engaging with you. And I think a first sign of like having a core audience is when you have consistent engagement. The people that are following you, they like what you're doing. They like what you're posting. They're really engaged. They're interacting with it. They're not just kind of letting it sit there and go by, keep scrolling, like they're engaged with it. And then conversion is when you get people to the next step, which is what you want. So whether you want them to watch a music video or listen to your music or buy some merch from you or attend your live and, you know, your digital concert, whatever it is, that's the final step. And I think once you see like the engagement is happening, you test it with something that you want them to convert to. So whether it's a song or whatever it is, once you get to that point, I feel like you built an audience. When you have a significant amount of people getting to the third step, to the conversion aspect of it. And how big it should be before you think ads should be run. I don't think it's about how big. I think, again, it's about, are they actually engaging and converting? And with ads, I feel like, you know, once you have in people engaging, that's cool. And then you also are running ads so that you can reach more of those people. Because when you start to get a group of people that are engaging, you start to realize that they have similarities. And so now you're learning like who your audience is, what type of people like my music, right? What are they may not all look the same. They may not all have the same lifestyle, but there is a common thread somewhere in there. Usually, right? Whether it's like maybe it's just they simply like the genre and they, you know, they like the style of the pocket that you're in, but there's always a common thread in your audience. And once you find that, then it's like, okay, great. Now I'm going to do ads where I can target more of these same exact type of people in whatever areas. And then, you know, you get even deeper to your analytics and look at, you know, your streaming or your views, and you see like, okay, where are these people located? Where are my fans? Let me find out I got a bunch of listeners in Detroit. I've never been to Detroit, but okay, cool. So now when I run my ad, I'm going to target Detroit as a city because they like the type of music that I make. And so that's how it goes.
And you don't have to have a certain sized audience before you start running ads. Like sometimes you run ads to find new people, just like Junae said, but you're going to have different messaging depending on where they are, right? Like if they've never heard of you, don't try to run ads to sell a shirt because they're probably not going to buy a shirt. Just
now you don't want your $5, and I'm like,
unless the shirt is just amazing by itself, right? Like you can maybe it's a really dope shirt. Yeah. It's not about being a fan of you. It's just a really dope shirt. But you know, for the people that you know are fans, you might run ads that are a little bit more aggressive. That say, "Hey, purchase this," or "Hey, my new album's coming out." For the people that aren't fans yet, you're not asking for any money yet. You're just maybe asking them to click play because, you know, you think that person likes J. Cole and your music is similar to J. Cole. So they might want to listen to what you have going on and start putting them on the journey to becoming an actual fan.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, let me see another question here. Somebody's asking for a shout out. No, we don't do that on this platform. It's pointless. I should have been looking. I know there's more questions in here, but let me go to one more screenshot that I took that you can break down for us. You want to have relationships, not just contacts. And I noticed that when you promoted the event today, there were some people that I had that I recognized that were liking or commenting. So I know that you have some pretty solid relationships in the industry. So you want to just expand on that a little bit. You want to have relationships, not just contacts.
Yes. So contacts are literally, right, people who you got their number, you have them on social media, and it's like, okay, cool. That's it. I think the problem comes in when you don't establish relationships with people, but you asking them for stuff, or, you know, you want a favor, you want a connection, but you haven't really established any sort of rapport with them. I'm really big on relationships and maintaining them. And that doesn't mean that I'm like out for lunch with every single person I know every single day, or I'm calling people every week to check in, or even texting every week to check in. But I think be a human being, right? Like, people are people. They're not their job title. They're not what they can do for you. They are a person first. And so I think just being a person and having empathy and just being normal, asking people how they're doing, or, you know, having social media, for example, right? I have a bunch of people in that just on social media that I have relationships with that are in super high places, but like, we're not cool because of that. Like, we're cool because we found a commonality, and like, we maybe like the same jokes, or I know they like this, so I'm going to send it to them because it's funny, or we could talk about like what we're making for dinner, something, but just be a person. I think it's very off-putting when, you know, you very clearly only want to connect with this person because you want something from them. Right. And people can see through that. And I think sometimes the idea is that people don't want to help others, but I don't think it's that. I think a lot of times it just feels crazy. And when you are in the industry, you got people asking for stuff all day long. Like, and you maybe not even had a glass of water or a meal for the day. You could have other stuff going on in your life. And it's like, yes, your job, but I just think it's important to actually establish relationships with people that are on a human level and not just a transactional level. Right. And I think there's plenty of people who have contacts and they don't know how to use them, or they can't use them, or because they just never established a relationship. Like, once you have somebody's number, it's like, okay, cool. Once they follow you on social media, it's like, okay, cool. But like, you know, I don't know. I've just personally and professionally, I've gotten very far with relationships, and most of my clientele has been referrals. Like 85% has been referrals. And I think when you're a good person and you do great work and you also likable, people have no problem. Like, there's going to be people talking about you, bringing up your name in rooms that you're not even in. There's going to be people sending your stuff out and don't even tell you, right? And then an opportunity presents itself and you eventually trace it back to this person and you're like, wow, like, they really looked out. I think we do this thing sometimes where we're just amassing contacts and we're like, oh, I got this person number, I got this, I could do this. But it's like, sometimes that becomes a game and you're not even doing anything with them. Like, you just... I guess it's the ego thing. Like, oh, I know this person, versus like, I have a relationship with this person. Me and this person are cool. Maybe I'm helping them with something that doesn't have to do with me. Just like, I want to stress a lot, especially for emerging creators and emerging entrepreneurs. It's just like the transactional thing. I just don't think it goes that way. And when you meet someone, my thing is always like, what can I do for them? Not what I think they can do for me. How can I be of value to them? And when you consistently bring value, it becomes a relationship and not just a contact in your phone.
Right. No, that's definitely a gem. All right, the hour is up, and I guess the person that wanted a shout out has something. I didn't mean to sound insensitive. If your friend has COVID, that's just not really the place for this. But thoughts and prayers to your friend that has COVID. But just kind of through, I didn't realize that he wanted a shout out for his friend that was, I guess his name is Nick Gertz. So thoughts and prayers to Nick. Hope he gets better. But yeah, that threw me off because it's not typically the place for something like that. But Junae, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
You're gonna have to come back. You're gonna have to update us. Maybe you're working on a project,
Sure.
and
Yes.
I mean, I know you're working on a bunch of projects, but you don't need to never reveal names if you're not able to. But I definitely like to do a deep dive on maybe a particular project and kind of like
would love that. That's
what went well, what didn't, stuff like that.
For sure, you do that. Just let me know anytime you need me. I'll be back. This is great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And follow Junae. You see the IG. It's just Junae Brown. I think it's Junae Brown on Twitter as well. I think it's pretty consistent
everywhere. It's Junae Brown and at B2P agency. If you want to follow the company and see what we do, we give out a lot of resources in marketing, business development, and wellness for emerging creators to get you as close to the point as being able to get like a full-time marketing manager as possible. And check out our series Brownie Bites too on IGTV, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff.
Dope. And Junae, stick around because I want to catch up, but I'm about to stop the broadcast. But for everybody else, I'll see you guys next week. I think we have Adam Ivy joining us. It's going to be another dope session. And then Payne has his session on Thursday. And once again, I have no idea what he's talking about. I need to do better about knowing what Payne's talking about. So I apologize, but it's on the website. Go to musicentrepreneur.club.com. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.